Chris Scalzi here with
Matt Howell.
And featuring super special guest
David Rosen from Piecing It Together.
Awesome. We are so excited that you, how do I put this? Deemed us worthy to join us on our show. Our middling, the longest running movie podcast you've never heard of. America's movie podcast. Though, you know.
I am very happy to be here, guys.
So thank you very much. This week on the big show, we're going to discuss Spike Lee's latest film that is currently available on Netflix, The Five Bloods. We'll also spend a few minutes talking about Chris Hemsworth's Extraction, also on Netflix. It's a Netflix fest this week. We'll tell you what's coming up in your physical media this week, featuring your straight-to-DVD and streaming picks of the week. And then finally, we'll wrap up the big show as the three of us share our 5 favorite non-MCU films starring MCU actors. So, sounds easy. Wasn't as easy as I thought. Well, we'll get into it. But let's start everything off with a clip from The Five Bloods.
We bury it. For now. They ask, we say the VC got it. They don't. We come back and collect.
You mean rip it off?
We ain't ripping off shit. Who feel like they're ripping something off? We was the very first people that died for this red, white, and blue. Yeah, that's right. It was a soul brother. Christmas addicts at the motherfucking Boston Massacre. We've been dying for this country from the very get, hoping one day they'd give us our rightful place. All they give us was a foot up our black asses. But fuck that. I say the USA owe us. We built this bitch.
So what you saying, Blood?
I'm saying we repossess this gold. Like they about to come repossess your Casio convertible now. We repossess this gold for every single black boot that never made it home.
So usually, David, we try and run the show a little clean, PG-13 at its best. But me being the SJW cuck that I am, sometimes I like to feature stuff if I think it's important. And I enjoyed Chadwick Boseman's little clip there. So, Matt, as we dive into The Five Bloods, and before I ask you our initial probing question, what is the film all about?
Oh, this is the one I'm going over?
I always like to hand you the longer, more intense ones. You know that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So this is about 4 Black Vietnam veterans who, years later, long after the war is over, decide to head back to Vietnam to get some closure on some things, namely finding a friend who was killed in action and maybe possibly retrieving his body, as well as a small matter of finding the millions of dollars in gold bars that they managed to find and hide. Yeah, that's basically what the film's about.
Well, that is certainly a quick plot synopsis. I'm not sure if that's what the film is so much about, but yes. So, The Five Bloods, or as I like to call it, fun with aspect ratios. I'm going to ask you a question, and David, you're welcome to answer first as our guest. After, as I'm going to put it, the roaring statement that was Black Klansman, does Five Bloods deliver another entertaining, Oscar-worthy message film from Lee, or is it possibly that there's a bit of a stumble here? What are your thoughts?
I think that this movie is not without its faults. It's a little messy, it's a little all over the place, but at the same time, it's absolutely powerful. It's filled with incredible performances, and I mean, overall, I loved it, and I would be perfectly happy if this is one of the movies that is coming up in the conversation if the Oscars are ever a thing again.
That's true, right? Well, I think they committed to have them in some capacity, but they just delayed when they're going to run,
later,
right?
Yeah, but yeah, I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I am open to that position. Matt, where do you fall?
Okay, so I agree with David insofar as the performance. Some of the performances are fantastic, especially Delroy Lindo. I've heard a lot of buzz about him going into this before I had seen it. A lot of people praising his performance, and I think that's spot on. But I think the performances are strong all the way around. I think it's a little... I would go so far as to say it's a little rambling at times, and that can be a strength in some parts, and it can be a weakness. I think it's a little unfocused sometimes. I think it's a little long at 2.5 hours, and I don't think it's as good for me as Black Klansman was, which I really, really enjoyed, and I thought that was one of Lee's strongest films in a long time, whereas this, I don't think is his strongest effort.
I think I agree with that mostly. I think it's perhaps not as focused and as entirely engaging as Black Klansman was, but I think there's still an important message here. And I will say at times I was on the edge of my seat with this thing. I think for the most point, he assembles this thing exceptionally well. There's a real true sense, I think, of camaraderie with the cast. You kind of feel how close all of them are, yet they're all very different and they have their own individual struggles, especially within the group itself. And Spike really kind of revisits this same motif, particularly, too, with the whole strained relationships between father and sons, which has been kind of something he's run with historically in his career. I agree with you that Lindo gets all the big moments here, including really Spike Lee's most direct messages, right? When Lindo's delivering these lines directly into the camera, directly to us as the viewer. So, David, one thing I wanted to ask, because your show, right, focuses on not just a discussion of the film, but a lot of the influences of it. And for me, this thing really screams Treasure of the Sierra Madre. What else would you say is what kind of helped put this thing together? What are some of the influences?
It's funny you bring that up because that's kind of the reason we haven't done an episode on it yet, is because aside from the ones that Spike Lee has gone on about in interviews and things like that, Treasure of Sierra Madre is a good example. Maybe like Platoon or something. Like there's movies that it's obviously inspired by, and then trying to dig up other ones, I've had a little trouble, to be honest. Like, it is kind of its own thing in a lot of ways. And then on top of that, a lot of the movies that maybe in the back of my mind are like maybe puzzle pieces, as we call them on the show, are things that I haven't seen in years and years and years. And I'm like, maybe I just got to let this one slide for the show, even though I really enjoyed watching it.
Well, I'm glad we were able to give you an opportunity to discuss it then. So that's great.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Here I'm here to help. I'm helping people.
Yeah.
That's what we do. So, Matt, I want to pick on something that you had mentioned too. Okay. That you felt that maybe it might be a little overly long.
Right.
I'm not in that camp. I agree with you that it's not entirely focused. And I will say, too, it never really seems to kind of catch speed and feel like the runaway train I think that Lee is going for here. But I didn't really feel like there were any wasted minutes. It's just unfocused and a little unwieldy. But I still think that everything that happens in it is telling an interesting story. And there's some side avenues we go down that may not entirely complete our narrative, but for the most part, I enjoyed all of those transitions, particularly Clarke Peters, Otis's character. When he meets his former lover and then his daughter. There's kind of a few of these moments here, and of course, Lee inserts his famous, double track dolly shot, I should say, right, that he does in so many of his films. But I didn't find it really overly long at all. David, how did you feel about that? Did you think it was a little? You could have trimmed some stuff out of it, or?
I don't think so. I think that, as you use the word rambling, and I think that's absolutely fair, but I think it was entertaining along the whole way, and especially, bolstered by those performances. I mean, I don't feel like enough people are talking about Jonathan Majors, who is just so damn good in this, but everyone is so good in this. I mean, it's just filled with so many great performances that I want to spend all that time with them. And I want to, see all these different little stories unfold, even if they don't all necessarily go somewhere all the way.
Well, I think part of the issue, right, is Lee has a lot to say here, right? He's talking to our topic discussions are family, be they blood relations or simply forged in blood. Statements about the U.S., war, racial relations, imperialism, greed, PTSD. I mean, we could go on forever with this thing, and maybe it's a strength, but potentially maybe a slight weakness for the film. And also, I would say, too, that Jonathan Majors is quite good in this. He was in one of our favorite films. Was it last year or 2 years ago, Matt? Last Black Man?
It was last year.
Last year,
yeah.
Just a stunning film. I'm assuming, David, you've had a chance to catch up with that, too, right?
Love it. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Matt, do you have any way to defend your stance on it being too long?
I guess
you're horribly wrong.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm horribly wrong. I mean, you basically both said that you agreed with me, but it was I agree with you, but that you got something different out of it. I think this thing moves very propulsively in the first hour or so. Mm-hmm. And then I remember I had to pause it to go do something else. And I was like, wait, there's still an hour and a half of this movie left because this thing is just like, just been moving with such speed and with such force. And I think he takes these detours into it. Some of it I'm all on board with, but some of it is, and it's very interesting, you know, listening to your podcast, David, I'm kind of surprised you're not going to really delve into this one, because I just got all these senses that there's this weird pastiche of these like influence that he's thrown into this thing. Like, you know, just nailing it like on the nose with the Travel Up the River and Apocalypse Now. He even plays, you know, plays Ride of the Valkyries. You know, you got Hanoi Hannah, which just reminds me so much of the DJ from the Warriors. Just all these things that he's kind of putting into it. And I think that's where it becomes unfocused to me. We're like, what is it? He's focusing on these messages and these themes that he wants to tell, and he's doing it very effectively. Then he splices in these little, almost, I hesitate to say it, but these maybe pastiches or these influences that he's putting in, these pieces of other black cinema or Vietnam movies, and just kind of putting them all in there. And I don't think it necessarily works, because it makes the tone of the film, it's very jarring for me when you kind of look like, oh yeah, I see what you're doing, and I'm not sure like, okay, yeah, I get it. You know, that's fine. But those are the kinds of things that it kind of took me out of it. When Ride of the Valkyrie starts coming on, I'm like, oh God. And then they're riding up the river. I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. I get what you're doing there. Very clever, you know? So like, those are the kinds of things that took it out of for me that I think maybe could have been excised.
Fair enough. So it sounds like David and I both feel that this is an Oscar contender, Matt, for Best Picture. What about you?
Well, I'd say this is going to sound terrible, but what else has come out this year so far? And we don't even know what else is going to come out this year.
Fair statement.
Yeah. I think this is one of those films that, you know, especially towards the end of the year, if we get the kind of usual slate of like super strong Oscar contenders, I don't think this one would rise to the occasion. But I think by the fact of what we've had so far of this year, I would say it's quite obviously an Oscar contender.
Yeah, I mean, I think outside of this, the only thing I would consider would be Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always.
Yeah, which I think is a far superior film to this, personally. Interesting.
David, a question for you. So this film is basically now what's the word I'm looking for? Not entourage or genre. What is it with a group of people? What am I blanking on here? What's the
I know the exact word you're looking for, and I'm blanking on it.
An ensemble?
Thank you.
Ensemble, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Woof. So this film is basically an ensemble piece, but Lindo, as I said, gets really all the big moments and all the big lines. So where do you come down with him too, Oscar nomination-wise? I think his role could easily have devolved into parody, but I think he toes the line magnificently in this thing. What do you think?
Well, I think, like Matt was saying about, you know, if the end of the year is filled with stronger, films that really kind of take over the conversation, I think Lindo is the thing that could still hang on when the time comes, and maybe it's, you know, just nominated for supporting actor. What do you think? Would it be supporting?
I think it's got to be lead.
Really?
I think so. I mean, he seems to be really the driving force. Him and Clarke Peters, but I think in the end, Lindo has the showier kind of performance between the two.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that would be like the one place where it's not necessarily a shoe-in, but it would be the safest bet at this point.
Matt, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that Lindo will be in the conversation. I think he could easily pull off lead, because he's obviously the kind of focus of this film. As much as the other actors are excellent in it, they're almost supporting him and his journey in this film. So I really almost think he's the protagonist of this film. So I would have no problem with him being lead. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I'm glad Lee was able to include Isaiah Whitlock Jr. here in his classic line delivery of that one word, which may or may not be the stinger of this show. You'll have to wait and hear it. But it's interesting if your whole career was almost known for delivering the S word in a particular style.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, man, I was not thoroughly prepared for some of the images of Vietnam atrocities that were thrown in there. I mean, the execution of Nguyen Van Lim, I've seen the famous picture, but I've actually never seen the full video of him, of the rest of it, which was more than I was expecting when I saw that. And of course, you know, the My Lai massacre and just all that stuff. I mean, I was not prepared for some of that stuff to be kind of flashed up on screen in a lingering kind of way in some parts.
Yeah, I was shocked by that. was there a content warning on that about showing actual death?
I don't recall. No.
Oh, that was tough. Dear Lord, man. All right. So, what are we going to give it for grades? Matt, you started off. David, we'll end up with you because it occurs to me now, I'm not even sure I told you how our rating system works.
I don't believe so.
So we do letter grades, A+ all the way down to F, or if we're particularly angry, you can even drop below an F, depending on how low a letter you want to go with. So, Matt, start us off. What do you got?
Yeah, even though I'm afraid you guys may kick me off the show. Maybe that's really what I'm going for at this point, Chris. But I'm gonna give it a B, personally. I think there was enough there that I think this is not one of those things that I would visit back. It's weird with Lee because I either really love his films or I'm just kind of like, yeah, okay. And I think this is kind of in the latter for me.
I ended up giving it a B+, so we're not that far off.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. David?
I'm a B+ as well, actually. So yeah, definitely. I think we're all kind of around the same level.
There you go. See, friends.
So, Chris, I would be really interested because I haven't seen most of Lee's work. I would be interested if next time we do a marathon, if run a director marathon, doing him in the running. Because I think I'd be really interested to see a lot of his films.
No, I think so. Let's lock that down because I've only seen 4 or 5 of them myself. It is a bit of a blind spot for me. So I would have some catching up to do, absolutely. David, are you more familiar with Lee's oeuvre?
No, I would say, 4, 5, 6 of his films. And I know he's got a lot more that I have not dived into, so I really should.
Yeah, we'll have to tee that up, Matt. That's a great idea. If you've had a chance to see The Five Bloods, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Coming up on Blu-ray and DVD, your physical media picks this upcoming Tuesday, June 30th. Again, it's all catalog stuff. It's been like this for weeks now, for the most part. Well, there's one thing getting released we'll talk about, but we're not going to give it the dignity of a clip. So let's hear a, air quotes, classic.
The ancient Romans called him Orca or Canis, Latin for bringer of death. He is without challenge the most powerful animal on the globe. The killer whale. Orca has 48 teeth, set in 2 impressive rows. In some respects, the orca's intelligence may be even superior to man's. They remain loyal to one mate for life. As parents, they are exemplary, better than many human beings. And like human beings, they have a profound instinct for vengeance. An innocent creature is destroyed by an act of human cruelty, and the ultimate battle of man against nature begins. Dino De Laurentiis presents Orca.
Dino. Always delivering the entertainment. So that's right, Orca, the Killer Whale, is being released starring Richard Harris and Charlotte Rampling. You can pick that up, includes an audio commentary with author film critic Lee Gambin and the original theatrical trailer. Also getting a big release. I wanted to include this with a clip, but there was... The only thing I could really find online was mostly just long stretches of the theme song, which you're just begging for some kind of YouTube strike, so I didn't grab it. But that, of course, Arrow is releasing Django, the original starring Franco Nero. It includes a Steelbook special edition, which I don't get why. David, are you a Steelbook guy? I'm not a Steelbook guy, at all.
They're cool. I don't go out of my way, though.
Fair enough. I don't think I got one Steelbook, and it wasn't even on purpose. I had reserved an edition of Mad Max, Fury Road, and the special edition at Best Buy, and they sold out. So they let me choose whichever one I wanted. So I ended up getting the Steelbook one for some reason, whatever. Oh no, it was the other way around. I clearly have no idea what I'm talking about. So the classic spaghetti western is being released from Arrow. There's a brand new 4K restoration from Django and a 2K scan of Texas Adios, the unofficial sequel that also starred Nero, and a whole bunch of special features in here. So if you're a Django fan, you're going to want to pick this up. From what I understand, this has been delayed due to rights issues for quite a few times, but it looks like Arrow is finally getting this out the door. The big film, sorta, coming out is Force of Nature, which stars 2 troubling stars, Mel Gibson and Emile Hirsch, along with Kate Bosworth. A gang of thieves plan a heist during a hurricane and encounter trouble when a cop tries to force everyone in the building to evacuate. Really, 2 stand-up guys, those 2. What else we got coming up here that we're excited about? Sukiyaki Western Django from MVD. Takashi Miike's film includes an extended cut of the film in standard definition, along with some deleted scenes and a making-of featurette. We had mentioned this one a couple weeks ago, but it had been delayed, so now it looks like it is officially coming out. Vinegar Syndrome is releasing Patty Hearst. It's a dramatization of her abduction and subsequent brainwashing, a brand new 2K restoration of that. An interview with the director, of course, this is a Paul Schrader film. Vinegar Syndrome is also releasing The Immortalizer, a brand new 2K restoration of that film. And then Vinegar is releasing only 2,500 copies of Best Friends. Jesse and Pat have been best friends as long as they can remember. They did everything together, including serving in the army, but now things are different. Both are engaged to be married and take their lives in different directions. Deciding to share one last road trip with their respective fiancés in tow, tensions quickly rise. Pat realizes that he's about to lose Jesse forever, becomes increasingly manic and unhinged, and it's not long before he begins exhibiting psychotic and violent tendencies. I mentioned this for no reason, Matt. Just if you ever consider leaving the show, just think about it. There's a brand new 2K restoration of that as well from the original camera negative. Again, though, only 2,500 copies. And Vinegar Syndrome is releasing one of their adult films, which we won't mention because we're clean. But if you're into that kind of stuff, go ahead and check out their site. Kino Lorber is releasing Narrow Margin, starring Gene Hackman and Ann Archer. I'm a big Gene Hackman guy. I don't know what it is. It's one of your great kind of... Is it fair to say he's a character actor? I don't know. What do you think? David? Matt?
Well, I guess the definition of a character actor is he's not attractive enough to be a lead, which I would say is true, right? But he is a lead in multiple films, so it's a tough one.
Crossover star. Kino's also relieving... There's also... Oh, sorry, what was that?
He said he broke the glass ceiling. He's through. He like the character actor glass ceiling.
Good for him. Kino is also releasing 10 Little Indians, the Agatha Christie adaptation starring Donald Pleasance, and of course, the legendary thespian Frank Stallone. Brand new 2K master of that film. Severin is releasing the complete Lindsay Baker Giallo collection, which includes Orgasmo, So Sweet, So Perverse, A Quiet Place to Kill, and Knife of Ice. There'll also be individual releases of each film. New masters of each one, including some director's cut. Orgasmo includes a US X-rated version, spicy, and most of them include CD soundtracks as well. So if you're a fan of these Giallos, now's your big chance to pick them up. The Oliver Stone-helmed TV series, the miniseries Wild Palms, is getting its release. This featured Jim Belushi, Dana Delaney, Robert Loggia, Kim Cattrall, Angie Dickinson, and the Ernie Hudson. And then, Matt, your straight-to-DVD pick of the week is Ouija, Blood Ritual. The footage of 3 filmmakers shooting a web series has been recovered. Intended to debunk famous internet urban legends and rituals, they perform a blood ritual that summons an ancient primordial entity in the process. As the spirit's unstoppable evil seeps into their daily lives, the trio are left with a single choice: submit to its will or die. Matt, what should we be streaming this week?
I want to recommend Diabolique, a French thriller about a cruel and abusive headmaster who's murdered by his wife and mistress together, but they slowly start to become unhinged when his body disappears and strange occurrences start happening around the house where they live. It's available on Amazon Prime, as well as HBO Max, the Criterion Channel, and Canopy, if that's your bag.
Wow, that's a lot of coverage. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
So, chugging right along, David, hope we'll have to wake him up, and we're going to spend a few minutes and talk about Chris Hemsworth kicking all kinds of ass in Extraction.
We landed the whale.
Oh, yeah?
Extraction. Indian kid. Drug lord's son. Rival gangsters holding this kid in Dhaka.
Hey, Gaspar lives in Dhaka.
Gasper's out of the game. Clock's running at 16 hours, deadline Friday noon. Proof of life as of 6 hours ago.
Yeah, I'll take it.
This gangster, Amir Asef, he holds a massive sway in Dhaka. You get your hands on this kid, it's gonna get complicated.
That's always fucking complicated, isn't it?
This was a mistake.
Ah, have we made a mistake? David, Is Extraction a worthy new franchise for Hemsworth? Or should we just focus on Love and Thunder? And why don't you spend a few minutes and tell us what Extraction's all about? If you're comfortable with that. I'm kind of putting you on the spot there.
Oh, it's about a guy who has to extract a kidnapped kid in the Middle East, and there's a whole bunch of headshots, and there's a lot of action, I guess. Yeah, this is not this movie is not necessarily my cup of tea. It's just, I don't know, it felt so much like stuff that we've seen a million times before, and I don't know that it's necessarily a good showcase for Mr. Hemsworth. Let's put it that way. I think it's just another action movie.
That is interesting. You're right. It didn't even occur to me. You could basically insert any other action star into this film, and you wouldn't even notice.
All of them. Yeah, all of them in one.
That is interesting. All right, so it sounds like David's not the biggest fan. Matt, what about you? Do we have a franchise here for Hemsworth? Is this his Taken?
No, it's not. Chris Hemsworth is at his best when he's kind of being goofy and kind of playing off his looks and his physique and everything else. It's why I love Ragnarok so much. That's why he's the best part of the Ghostbusters remake is Chris Hemsworth being a himbo, because he does that very well. He's just being a badass, and I think David, nails around the head. This could be literally anybody. They could put you in the role, Chris, and it would have been basically the same movie,
I don't.
But that
how good looking are you allowed to get? I don't know if that's appropriate.
That's true. We might need to back off a little bit about that. It can only handle so much sizzle, right? It's an okay action movie though. It's not. I mean, as far as action movies go, it's competent. I mean, and there are some scenes in it that are really good. Like I thought there's kind of like an extended take inside the car, chase shootout thing that I thought was really cool and really well done. But
you think so? I felt like that backseat cam, though, was an interesting idea. Ended up reducing it to like feeling like a video game.
No, I thought it was quite effective. I thought it was very disorienting. I'm sorry, David, I cut you off.
Oh no, it's okay. I was just saying I felt a lot of it felt like that, like video game cutscenes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, most of this this just kind of devolves into, as David said, a lot of double tapping, just over and over and over again. So I mean, that's basically, it's like it does devolve into like Call of Duty, the movie with Chris Hemsworth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it starts off as a banger. Personally, I'm on board with this. Even the brutality of it all, right? It works for me, but then it just, I want to say slowly, but maybe not so slowly, kind of just devolves into this action cliche after action cliche. Or David Harbour shows up in this, right? He's a guy I've loved for years, even before blowing up in Stranger Things. Whenever he shows up, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get something cool here. But as soon as he shows up, you know exactly what's going to happen. Same with that kid, Farhad, right?
Yeah.
He desperately wants to work his way into our main bad guy, Ami Asif's organization. And you know exactly what's going to happen. Because he's going to play a prominent role later on in the film. And then don't even get me started on the Marvel-esque kind of reveal at the epilogue, which ends up negating, I think, any potential impact of the film's conclusion, right? And this grand sacrifice is instantly washed out by this, kind of cloudy or, the heat vapor waves as this guy is standing there, who's clearly going to be Hemsworth, right? Because they've already announced they're making a sequel, too, so I'm not sure how you survive that shot through the neck, but fine, whatever. I enjoyed it, as I said, a little bit for the brutality. This is, I think, a rather interesting kind of air quotes tracking shot in the apartment fight, right? Where we kind of just follow Hemsworth as he goes to his apartment fighting different guys. I appreciate kind of maybe the ambition of that, but in the end, the whole thing felt like David said, I've seen this thing a dozen times.
It's not anything that's earth-shattering. It's not anything particularly exciting. But I mean, you know what? It's, as far as all of the dumb action movies that you make me watch, like this is probably the most competent dumb action movie that I've seen in a while. If you just take it as just kind of a reductive, dumb action movie, I mean, it's entertaining enough. I mean, and it has a kind of nasty sensibility to it. I mean, they're throwing kids off of a friggin' roof.
Jesus.
I mean, that's not something you see every day.
David's like, more kids off the roof.
More kids off the roof. Would this be in the same conversation? This is really one of those things of, we talk about how we grade on a curve for the genre that it's in, and this is like B movie action film. And as far as a B movie action film goes, I think it's relatively successful. I would give it a B- personally for for what it is.
It's like a Seagal. It's like a Seagal film with a little extra money and a little more flash.
It's like if you gave Jean-Claude Van Damme a little bit more money and some computer graphics, like back in his heyday. That's really what this is, and I'm fine with that.
Someone on Twitter, I wish I remember who it was, said that Netflix has tricked people into loving straight-to-video movies, basically, and this is a perfect example of that. This is just straight-to-video action movie. But I agree, though, it's not terrible for the genre. It's just a perfectly fine movie in its genre.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I my grade doesn't seem to be grading on a curve, actually. I think, which is weird. I don't know if I don't want to prematurely end the discussion. Like David, I feel like Matt and I have monopolized this conversation. Do you have any other thoughts about Extraction?
Not really, because it's just so, it is what it is. I think there's a few all right action sequences. It's well put together. As far as a grade is concerned, I was going to say a C, but it's a strong C. And I think that it's just, if it had something more to it, maybe it would be, a more interesting movie, or if the, it is violent, and I do appreciate, like, I love the John Wick movies, I appreciate a good violent action movie, but if maybe it needs to be more violent. I don't know, like more headshots. I'm not sure what it's missing exactly. It just felt so generic. That's all.
It needs some creativity in its kills. That's really what it's lacking. You can only watch a guy get shot, double tapped with an AK-47 over and over and over again. So
yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So Matt, I got you down for a B-. David, you're at a C.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If above the law is an A+ in this genre, this is a B-. Or no, Out for Justice. Excuse me. Out for Justice is an A+. This is a B-.
I actually just rewatched Out for Justice like a month ago. That was always my favorite Seagal film, just because of that ridiculous Italian, like Brooklyn accent that he's playing on that thing. And that thing is not aged. It is horribly entertaining and fun, but it is bad.
Is it? I haven't seen
But it was still when he wraps up that cue ball in the towel and they start slapping people with.
Nice.
Classic stuff. So I'm actually right in the middle. I got a C+ for Extraction. So we'll have to see what they do with the sequel. So yeah. I love that description, though, that they've tricked people into watching straight-to-DVD movies. Straight-to-home video stuff. You're right.
Especially now, because that's what is the option,
There's Roma, and then there's the rest of Netflix's catalog, basically.
Yep, exactly.
So if you've got a chance to see Extraction, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Next up, we're going to share our thoughts and our 5 favorite films of MCU stars, your Robert Downey Jr.'s, your Chris Evans, your Ruffalos, right? All your Scarlett Johanssons, your Elizabeth Olsens, all of their films that are not actually MCU films. So here's one that didn't quite make the cut for me, and I feel like I'm taking some wind out of Matt's sails here. So we'll see if this makes his list.
Control?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have the Harbinger on line 2.
Oh, Christ. Can you take a message?
I don't think so. He's really pushy. To be honest, he's kind of freaking me out.
Okay, put him on. Mordecai, baby, what's happening? How's the weather up top?
The lambs have passed through the gate. They are come to the killing floor.
Well, you're doing a great job out there. By the numbers, man, you gotta start it off just right. So we'll talk to you later, okay?
Their blind eyes see nothing of the horrors to come. Their ears are stopped. They are the gods' fools.
Well, that's how it works.
Cleanse them. Cleanse the world of their ignorance and sin. Bathe them in the crimson of... Am I on speakerphone?
No, absolutely not. Speakerphone, no, I wouldn't do that.
Yes, I am. I can hear the echo.
So Matt, I'm a big fan of Cabin in the Woods, co-written and directed by Drew Goddard, which is I think just a wonderful homage and satire at times of the horror genre. David, are you a fan of Cabin in the Woods?
I only saw it once, but I definitely enjoyed it at the time. It is very unique and interesting.
Yeah, and of course its tie-in is it features Chris Hemsworth. One of the films that sat on the shelf for years, along with that Red Dawn remake that he's in, which is just terrible. That Red Dawn remake is unwatchable. It's one of the few movies I actually got angry when I watched it. So, yeah, don't watch that one, kids. Watch Cabin in the Woods instead. So we're going to roll around here. I'll go first, Matt, you second, and then David, since you're our guest, you get the ultimate number one. My number 5, then, is going to be a weird, creepy little science fiction film from Jonathan Glazer, starring Scarlett Johansson, featuring an absolutely haunting score by Mika Levy, and that is Under the Skin. ScarJo plays an alien who, so if an alien comes to Earth, it takes the form of Scarlett Johansson, who then lures men into this black kind of inky void and then feeds on them by sucking the life force and some physical parts clearly out of them. But it is a really kind of surrealistic dream-like horror film about not only just aliens and science fiction, but there's also the vulnerability of love in some capacity as well. So there's a lot going on in this thing, but I remember walking out of the theater after watching this, just having my mind blown by this thing. So it's my number 5, Under the Skin. Matt.
Yeah, so, I'm just going to move this one down to the bottom. I'll go ahead and talk about it now. Cabin in the Woods, a film about basically like a send-up of kind of all the tropes that you have in all these horror movies, and that's all kind of built into the film to be like have a very specific purpose, and it's kind of being controlled by puppet masters in the back to why all of these slasher and horror movies that you've seen, they all have a deeper meaning, and it's a lot of fun for people who are like horror nerds like I am. It's fun to kind of pick out all the different little things and little homages that they have and the different monsters and stuff. So, and just by the sheer fact that it has monsters is thumbs up in my book.
There you go. Dave, what do you got for us? Number 5.
All right. Well, I'm going with another Scarlett Johansson movie. It is 2003's Sofia Coppola movie, Lost in Translation.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, about a falling movie star played by Bill Murray and a bored young woman. They're in a foreign land, and they just strike up this friendship, this relationship, and you just kind of watch it unfold. And it's a beautiful film, and Sofia Coppola has gone on to do some pretty great stuff all over the years, and just a lot of great people involved in this thing, and it's a great one. And Scarlett Johansson is fantastic at it.
No, yeah, she is quite good. I haven't seen Lost in Translation, I think, since it came out. I do remember really loving it. It is an honorable mention for me, but no, that is solid. So my number 4 then is going to be Bong Joon-ho's Snowpiercer, starring Chris Evans. This has recently just been made into a television show, which I have not seen yet, because I understand it's actually a police procedural in some capacity, though I'm sure they're hinting at the greater messages that Joon-ho's film really tackles, which is really, the strife between the classes. If you're not familiar with Snowpiercer, we have global warming, right? There's climate change, and it's going to destroy the Earth, so the scientists come up with an idea. Right, they try and do this cooling machine, and it ends up turning the whole planet into a deep freeze. A limited amount of people are able to go on board this bullet train, basically, that just circumnavigates the globe constantly. And there's different class systems, and then Evans is part of the downtrodden worker class, and they're trying to fight their way to the front of the train for some equality, to experience perhaps a bit of the good life. And there is a lot of great action in this scene, particularly the darkened out, the blacked out fight scene, right, in the train car with all the axe-wielding crazy bad guys. And there's a lot of great imagery in this thing. And Joon-ho, I think, is on the top of his game with Snowpiercer. A great, fun little action sci-fi film that has a lot more to say than just entertain. So that's my number 4. Are you a fan of the Snowpiercers there, David? I know Matt is.
I actually don't love Snowpiercer. I love the idea of it, and I just don't really, I don't know. Didn't do it for me as an overall movie, though.
one of our previous co-hosts, Dave, he had the same opinion. He was not as enamored with the film as I was. So it's understandable. It hurts a little bit, but that's fine.
I apologize profusely.
Matt, number 4.
So my number 4 is a film from one of my favorite directors. Just kind of fallen off maybe a little bit as of late, but he still holds a special place in my heart. But this stars 2 major prominent MCU actors, plus a third who was in a villain. Talking about Zodiac by David Fincher. Stars Mark Ruffalo, Robert Downey Jr., and Jake Gyllenhaal. It's basically the story of the Zodiac killer terrorized San Francisco in the 1970s, taunting the press, murdering young couples out in public. And it's a really interesting, creepy film that's got all of Fincher's detached and clinical direction in it that just really works for the film for me.
Zodiac, huh?
Yeah, giving you a little taste of your own medicine. I moved around my list, just to kind of make sure it goes well.
You son of a bitch.
All right. That's interesting. I'm not familiar with the film, so I don't anticipate it coming up on my list. My number 3 is going to be...
Wait. You're skipping our guest.
What?
Oh, yeah. My turn.
You're skipping your guest.
Oh, that's right. I got all confused. It goes me, then you, then him. Yes. I got you, me, then him. Because I was so upset that Zodiac was number 4 on your list.
Well, maybe I had to do some reshuffling,
Sorry, let me collect myself. While I do that, David, what's your number 4?
I almost included Zodiac, by the way. Great.
It's not even on your list.
It's not. Honorable mention, let's say. But no, for number 4, I am going to go with Taylor Sheridan's Wind River, which stars both Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen. A fantastic movie about a hunter who teams up with a FBI agent to solve a murder on a Native American reservation, and it's just incredibly bleak, like a lot of Taylor Sheridan films, and it's just a really tense thriller and really well done movie.
Oh, I love Wind River. In fact, I had forgotten all about it. When I was doing my search, I didn't even search for Renner, which is just, I guess, an indictment on his Hawkeye character, really, more than anything else. But no, Wind River's great, man. That particular scene when they're at the camp, and then the other with the deputy or sheriff's like, "Did you not see that? Did you not see that? It's so tense," and you're like, "Oh my god," yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That is a great film, man. That's good. I'm upset I forgot about that one. I am a hack. My number 3, is it my turn then? Right? I'm good? I'm not stepping on any toes? I don't want any trouble. My number 3 is the film that basically showed Hollywood that Robert Downey Jr. was a relatively safe bet again. This is pre-Iron Man, and that is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang by Shane Black, where he plays a guy who's maybe not on the right side of the law, and he's running away, and he ducks into basically an audition, and then he ends up landing this role, and then he gets teamed up with Val Kilmer, who he shadows as to learn what it's like to be a private investigator. And this thing, if you like, there's a big hullabaloo of how great The Nice Guys is, right? Well, if you kind of want to see that kind of similar dynamic, then you check out Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which came out in 2005, right? Yeah. This thing is a lot of fun, some good action, but it's, let me put it this way. When it comes to really kind of crappy, cheesy, is it late 80s, early 90s action films, I love me some Last Boy Scout. But if you actually want some, like, a good script with some good acting and talent and a reasonably entertaining story that makes sense, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is your film. If you have not checked it out, I cannot recommend it enough. So that's my number 3. David, you're nodding your head. I'm happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely great movie. I love Shane Black so much.
All right, so that was on my list, but I'm going to move it around so we can talk about something else for a change. I'm going to go with Martha Marcy May Marlene, starring Elizabeth Olsen as a young woman who escapes from an abusive cult, the cult leader played by the wonderful John Hawkes. And basically her trying to struggle, kind of trying to reconnect with her family, trying to kind of renormalize the society, and just always the constant paranoia of that they could be after her at any moment.
No, that's a solid pick. I like that film a lot. That's good.
I feel like we don't get enough John Hawkes lately.
We need more. He was in Peanut Butter Falcon, so there's that.
That was nice when he popped up in there.
I do like him in the villain role too. He brings an extra. There's an extra just dusting of sinister that he brings that I don't know. I can't really wrap my head around it, but it's always entertaining. That's for damn sure. All right, I'm not going to cut you off this time, David. What do you got?
All right, well, so you guys did say that members of the Guardians of the Galaxy count, correct?
Yep.
Oh yes.
Okay, good. This one might stretch things a little bit here, but I am going to go with a certain member of the Guardians of the Galaxy named Groot and Vin Diesel, and I'm going to go back to 2000's Boiler Room, a movie about basically about scam brokerages and investment firm where it's just all super fast track and like just crazy energy and just total just scamming people, and just it's a crazy movie. I haven't seen it in a while. My friends and I used to watch this one all the time back in college, and it was just such a great movie, and it showed so much promise for Vin Diesel before he became basically just Fast and the Furious machine. But him and Giovanni Ribisi and of course Ben Affleck in a just insanely great cameo performance. But just such a fun movie and such a memorable movie. It's just one of those movies that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, I think.
Yeah, that's good. I have not seen Boiler Room in years, probably not since it came out. Though I gotta say, I absolutely respect going with Vin Diesel, who basically he just has one word that he says with different inflections for 2 films or 4.
So I was like, I don't know if this counts, but I'm gonna go for it.
No, I appreciate it. That's good. That's a Howell move. That's a Matt move. So I'm impressed with that. All right. So my number 2 then is going to be a perfect film, a film that gets brought up on this show like all the time. So it's going to be, what are we talking about? Destin Daniel Cretton's Short Term 12, starring Brie Larson. If you listen to the show with any regularity, you've heard me gush about this movie. It is wonderful, fantastic, beautiful, featuring some standout performances by Brie Larson, John Gallagher Jr., and really kind of a launching pad for a lot of great current actors. Caitlin Dever, Rami Malek, Lakeith Stanfield, right? All of them have great little turns in this thing. Brie Larson, along with Gallagher, they work at a group home for troubled teenagers, right? So they're too old really to be adopted, but they're not old enough to be on their own yet. And it's them kind of navigating this life with these kids, dealing with their problems as well as their own personal challenges. But it is heartwarming, touching. It's going to make you cry and fill you up with smiles and love. Short Term 12 is fantastic and my number 2.
Yeah, you just talked about it the last show.
I did. Well, I can't not though. It's such a. We're gonna have to put it in the pantheon there with Drive. Put it in the vault, or I'm not allowed to talk about it anymore.
There you go. So my number 2 is a film that not people really talk about that much anymore, especially on this show. This was a film that came out like right when we started the show, and Chris gushed about this thing at length, and he never really talks about it anymore. So I still enjoy it. So my number 2 is The Hurt Locker, starring Jeremy Renner, and also stars Anthony Mackie, and directed by the first ever female Best Director Oscar winner with Catherine Bigelow. Renner plays a sergeant who joins a bomb squad unit and basically is at odds with his kind of maverick, gung-ho ways that's going to endanger all of the lives around him. It's an excellent little tense action movie kind of thing, and it's not the type of action movie where, like what we just saw, where it's like a lot of shooting and stuff like that, but it's a lot of very tense, edge of your seat thriller type stuff, and it's fantastic. I'm surprised that not as many people talk about it as they used to. Looking at you, Chris.
Again, it's the Renner thing. It did not occur to me to search me some Renner, right? I could have thrown a Bourne Legacy on here, but no, I did not do that. So, what about you, David? Are you a fan of the Hurt Locker?
Oh, absolutely. Fantastic movie. I mean, just tension, out of control tension in that movie.
Yeah. No, that is a classic. That's a great one. I don't know if it's a classic, but it is a great one. All right, what do we got? Your number 2.
All right. Well, I am going to go with a movie that depending on the month or the week, is either incredibly controversial and maybe canceled, and then other times is completely celebrated. And that is Tropic Thunder from director Ben Stiller, and of course starring Robert Downey Jr. as a pompous actor who is doing blackface, but Robert Downey Jr. isn't necessarily doing blackface, even though he is. But that's not the point. The point is that it's one of the funniest movies of the last 20 years, and it totally sends up everything about Hollywood and the self-seriousness of actors and the film industry, and it's just so funny. It's so incredibly funny.
I haven't seen that movie in forever. I should watch it again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, no, we should definitely put that in the queue, man. It's been a long time for me as well. That's solid. All right, my number one, which was not on one person's list, which I think I demand an explanation, and then it was included on another person's list, but entirely too high. And that, of course, is David Fincher's Zodiac. You have a threefer. Right, you got RDJ, we got Ruffalo, and you got Gyllenhaal. Though Gyllenhaal, I don't think really counts, right? He didn't exactly lead that film.
I just kind of snuck him in there, just
but he's a lot of fun, and that is Mysterio. But what Fincher's able to do with Zodiac, man, you are transported to San Francisco in that time, right? It is, it's one of the best. It's just really just fantastic filmmaking from start to finish. A riveting film, truly terrifying at times. Great performances all around, and I don't understand. There's a weird thing where just some people just are not a fan of Zodiac. I'm not quite sure what that is. David, maybe you can expand upon that. What do you think? What are your issues with Zodiac that it just didn't quite make the list for you?
Oh, it was literally, it would have been number 6 for me. I love Zodiac. I think and I can't speak for other people who maybe don't like it, but I think maybe people just didn't see it. It seems to be the thing. I mean, I find a lot of people that I speak to are like, oh yeah, I never did see that movie. And so that's the only thing I could think of, but Zodiac's amazing.
All right, good. It's like a 4-course meal, man, right? There's just so much in that film. You just sit there and then just let it wash over you and just kind of get sucked into this compelling narrative and this just gorgeous kind of put together film. Matt, go ahead. Upset me.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I was just going to add that, Zodiac is a film that had to kind of grow on me. I remember when I saw it, much younger and unsophisticated. I think partly the camp was it's Fincher and it's about a serial killer. So I think people are expecting maybe more of a 7 again or something more closer to 7. And it's not that at all. And most of it is not even really that focused on the killer. So I think the expectation is that you're going to get all of this kind of horror movie slasher gore kind of stuff. And that's just very rare. Most of it is all investigation procedural press stuff. And that's not necessarily, I think, what people went in for. That's why I think people don't necessarily like it, or at least didn't like it when it came out as much.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I am the bigger snob of the two of us, so that's a fair point. All right. Matt, number 1.
Well, my number 1, as Chris was, expounding that Zodiac was my number 4. Well, my number 1 was his number 5, for God's sakes, which was Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson, which is why I moved Zodiac down, just so I could ruin his thunder like he ruined mine.
See, David, we're all about integrity.
I love it.
But I absolutely love this film. It's just a strange, weird film that just kind of gives you these whiplash moments of things that just seem very, very real, just because a lot of what they did, some of the conversations that Scarlett Johansson has with men were just men on the street. They weren't acted. They weren't scripted. They were just people that she was talking to. And then it whiplashes into this kind of weird, surreal, nightmare fuel stuff that you see with, the alien and the eating of people and stuff like that. It's a nightmare film that I absolutely adore. And it's just, it's something that just sits with me. And I love it, weirdly enough.
All right. I'm all right with that. That's good.
Thank you.
David, take us home. What's your number 1?
Yeah. I'm so excited to lowbrow the hell out of this conversation right now, guys, because I am going with David Wayne's 2001 epic Wet Hot American Summer.
Nice.
Which,
That's
of course,
good.
starred Paul Rudd and also Bradley Cooper. And it is just one of the funniest movies ever again, but it's a send up of 80s summer camp movies, and it's basically a spoof, but it also kind of celebrates the tropes and everything that made those movies what they are. And it's just filled with so many star making performances. And for people who grew up with The State, is a reunion of pretty much all the actors that were on the MTV sketch comedy show The State, and is one of my all-time favorite movies, and Paul Rudd is just fantastic in it.
No, that is a great pick. You know what? I never caught up with the was it the Netflix sequel series, the limited series? How was that?
It was pretty good. It's a little much. It's it's a little long and maybe unnecessary, but it's got its moments.
Yeah, I gotta catch up with that. I gotta rewatch that too. I haven't seen that thing in a long time. David, any honorable mentions for you? Anything didn't make the cut?
A little movie called Zodiac was definitely an honorable mention for me. Other than that, no, that's it.
Fair enough. Matt?
So we had some that were already mentioned or multiple times. Snowpiercer, Lost in Translation, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Wet Hot American Summer. Two that weren't mentioned was American Sniper with Bradley Cooper.
Yep.
And then just something that's very special and near and dear to the show, and really was one of the foundations of the show, is I Love You Man, starring Paul Rudd. It's just something I'm going to bring up every time I can.
No, that's appropriate, and you should. Yeah. Yeah, David, that's Matt. When Matt and I became friends, we had a mutual friend who said we would really get along. So we ended up going to see I Love You Man in the theaters and getting something to eat. And there's that scene in the movie, where Sandberg tells him, "You're not going on a date. You don't go to dinner in a movie," which is exactly what we had done.
Yes.
And that was where this show came from.
That is, yeah.
All of those and a couple things that weren't mentioned. Knives Out, Rian Johnson's Who Done It with Chris Evans, which I enjoyed a lot. And then finally, the film that gave Brie Larson an Oscar, and that is Room. I would throw that on there as well. So, folks, what do you think of our list? Did we miss any? You have any picks or issues with ours? Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Coming up next week, Matt, what are we doing next week? The way things are now, I can't even keep track of this stuff anymore.
Yeah, so I can tell you that Bloodshot is on the calendar. I may want to not do that, but it's something called Shadow, which I'm unfamiliar with. Although, if we're going to punt something, I would suggest maybe watching 13th. I've heard some really good thing about it, about the 13th Amendment. It's a documentary on Netflix as well.
Oh, yeah.
So.
It's been out there for quite a while. We'll regroup. What about you, David? What you got coming up on your show? Where can people find you? What's going on?
Sure. Well, piecing it together, we just keep plugging away with episodes, trying to squeeze in new VOD and streaming movies because of everything going on right now, as well as looking back to older movies with the special Missing Pieces series that we're doing. But check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts, and at piecingpod.com, and we're on social media at piecingpod.
Fantastic. So where do you, what's going on? So you're in, I don't want to blow up your spot, but you're in Nevada, right?
That's right.
Is it Nevada? Nevada. I don't want to make you angry.
Nevada.
It is Nevada. Thank you.
Yeah. 50% of people say it one way, 50% say it the other way.
I appreciate the correction. So theaters here, I'm in Florida, Matt's in Connecticut. So theaters here are opening, it looks like the 15th of July for me. Are you going to go back, or are you hanging tight and not going in there? Or are you just going to say, you know what, I got to see Tenet? Where are you hanging on this?
Honestly, man, I don't believe anything's opening. We've had the go-ahead from our governor for a week or so now for the July openings. Whenever the major chains open up, because we don't really have any independent theaters here, unfortunately. So it's all Regal and AMC and Cinemark. But I don't believe it's going to happen. And even if it does, I can't picture myself going, as much as I honestly, I love watching movies in the theater. I am not even as big of a fan of movies when it comes to watching at home. Like it's just theater or nothing for me for the most part. I have so much trouble just locking in at home to watch a movie. So I can't wait to get back, but I just don't see it happening.
Interesting. Yeah, Matt, we're gonna have some decisions to make. So they're running at 30% capacity here, from what I understand, and they're mandating masks. Matt and I are both AMC A-listers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, AMC said they're not going to require masks.
No, they switched.
Oh, they switched back.
There was such an uproar on social media over that weekend that Monday morning they switched.
Okay.
Which is funny because Cinemark and Regal both didn't require it either, but everybody latched on to AMC, which I don't really understand. But yeah, I think they're all switching back to masks required, which at least that's good. That's something.
Yeah. No, I think 30% capacity. Where I feel like I just need to do it. I miss it so much. So I'll be in my mask. I'll wear gloves. I'll make sure no one's around me. They state they're gonna clean each theater, with this super dense, super clean stuff. I don't know. So I think I'm willing to go. Maybe Tenet will be the first one out of the chute, Matt. I'm not sure. We'll have to figure that out. Where are you on that? I don't want to mandate you do something.
Yeah,
you got a family. All I got a wife who's relatively fond of me and a dog. So,
yeah, I guess it really depends. It depends on. I mean, Connecticut's doing pretty well with cases, but I think this thing is really just kind of taking off, just waiting in the wings. I mean, look what's happening with Florida. So, I mean, we'll see. But at the same time, I will admit that the gyms opened up here last week, and I have been going just to try and shed off my 25 pounds of quarantine weight that I've added here. So, we'll just have to see how we're doing, and things like Tenet, yeah, I would definitely go see, but if it's something I'm not super into, maybe not risk it. So we'll just have to see.
And we may end up getting shut down here in Florida since we are not doing too well.
Yeah, no, you guys are not doing well at all.
Guys, I just thought of one more for our Marvel thing, for a honorable mention. Mark Ruffalo, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh, yeah.
That's solid. That's a good pick.
Yeah.
Son of a gun. See?
Had to go out with a bang there.
That's smart. No, I appreciate that. That's going to be the big show for this week. As always, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Do a search for The First Run. Scroll. Eventually, you will find us. Go over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. Not only will we read it on the air, it'll help other people find the show. And that's going to be it for this week. So we're going to take an extended break, and we will see you soon. Let's hear Isaiah Whitlock do what he does best.